Hello, Anthony.
Hello, Claudine.
So we're here today with an update
Yes.
about passport revocation and denial. Finally, this law passed in 2015. The IRS website originally said that this would start happening in early 2017. They changed the website to say sometime in 2017, and now we think this may actually be happening in early 2018 because you had a conversation yesterday. Our friend Keith Redmond invited you to be on a call with the Taxpayer Advocate. And you spoke with Amanda Bartman and Rusty Schiller, who are both attorney advisors. Are they attorneys that are advisors or advisors to attorneys?
Yeah, I was a little wondering that myself. I said, what an interesting title that is. But after my conversations with them and reading some of their writing, I'm like, I'm pretty sure they're attorneys who advise the Taxpayer Advocate.
Now, I have in my hands a letter that one of our clients received. It is a notice CP 504B, which has to do with levying accounts. Just want to make sure if you have unpaid amount due on your account, if you do not pay the amount due immediately, the IRS will seize or levy certain property or rights to property. On this notice, CP 504B, there is a section at the end that says denial or revocation of U.S. passport. And there's a whole paragraph about how they can revoke or deny your passport if you owe over $50,000. So they are sending out notices to let people know this is happening. But what you learned yesterday sort of tells us that they're not necessarily going to be revoking passports immediately. More so, they're going to start with denials.
That's right. So the IRS is, this is a very difficult thing for the IRS to implement, to say the least. Also very difficult for the State Department who has to do it. I don't imagine anybody at either agency actually likes this law. I don't imagine they know it's going to be a bad thing that's going to harm a lot of people and create a massive backlog of some of the worst cases in people in high stress situations. I mean, who wants to deal with someone on the phone crying and calling you all sorts of names? And they're in a scared situation, very vulnerable. So the thing I did find out last night was that the IRS isn't going to start revoking because this was sort of the issue. As I asked them the questions, I was like, okay, well, tell me the process about getting it back. Let's say that I have a client who calls me, oh my God, my passport has been revoked. Oh my God, what am I going to do? I need it back like immediately. And I said, okay, well, what if I can get them put into an installment agreement or a currently non-collectible status, which, by the way, isn't finalized if the IRS is going to allow that. But let's just say that I do. I'm successful. A couple hours later, I call back the client and say, hey, good news. You are in one of the authorized collection alternatives that will allow you to keep your passport. But I'm not done yet because that was just the IRS saying, okay, yeah, you're in a thing. I have to deal with the State Department, the people who actually revoked your passport. So now what's the mechanism by which they have to decertify you as a delinquent taxpayer? How long does that take to get? Can I get that to the State Department quickly? Can I expedite that service? When your expedited passport service, if you get that, it takes you still 5 or 6 days to get that. And if you're in an emergency, you can go down there in a day. But I'm assuming, what I'm hoping is there is some expedited thing. I think it's going to still be a lot of time, but there weren't.
You're asking for one government agency to talk to another government agency and figure stuff out.
Yeah,
that's challenging.
That's challenging. Now, I think a lot of people might be listening and say, well, you know what? Tough luck. You knew you owed back taxes, and you knew the IRS was going to do this, and now it's only an emergency because you made it an emergency. You know what? We know things don't quite work like that because, first of all, who reads their IRS notices? Sorry, most people don't. The IRS, people come in our office. When they do, they bring in stacks of unopened mail. Sometimes we tell them they actually don't have a problem. It does happen. We're like, okay, well, here's the IRS notifying that they put you in currently non-collectible status. You don't need to hire us. Right, you're okay. You're really? Oh, I was about to hire you. Like, maybe sometime later. So that is really the thing. People don't open the mail. And, talking with Amanda and Rossi last night, they said, Taxpayer Advocate Nina Olson has just said, these letters are not created in a way to inform people. And I thought, what a great insight. That's absolutely right. They're designed to meet the statutory requirements of notice. That's you're satisfying the statute. You're not satisfying somebody like, what the heck is this notice all about? Some of our most popular content on our blog is basically just saying, here's the IRS notice. This is actually what it means.
Right.
it's full of this scary stuff, and you can't make sense of it, and you're sort of blinded by like just that whole envelope thing is a little, it's gross. Who wants to open it? And you're reading it not in a good emotional state, and you can't make sense of it. It's written in a legalese that's again designed to satisfy some legal requirement.
Right.
But the fact is you simply don't understand it. Most people don't. So this sort is like, okay, I got another notice from the IRS. What does it mean? I don't know. Hopefully it doesn't mean anything. I'll just put it away.
Now, let's say you do end up having a problem where you do owe over $50,000. You find out your passport's going to be denied, possibly revoked. I think what you said that I thought was most interesting is that you can't. Now, the Taxpayer Advocate said they're going to help people that have this issue because they think it's sort of screwy. But you can't rely 100% on Taxpayer Advocate, but you can't rely 100% on yourself, but you can't rely 100% on your representation. Like you need.
Yeah.
You need everyone working together.
These are going to be, what I anticipate to be some of the most difficult cases to resolve. And what I'm hoping to avoid is the unresolvable cases. And these do happen sometimes where you have someone who has a high income, and the IRS is just not allowing some reasonable expenses. We've had some really baffling ones where I remember a woman, she lived about 30 minutes from Hartford, and there was no public transportation to get to her doctor, so she had to hire a taxi cab, and this was before Uber or anything. And so she had a taxi cab expense of like $600 a month. And we had to go fight for tooth and nail. And actually, I think we got the Taxpayer Advocate involved in this case to say, are you nuts? Because they wouldn't allow that as an expense. Like, she's got to see her doctor. She can't drive. There's no other way for her to get where he is. How could this not be a necessary expense? And that's what it took. Is we were like, okay, we need to get some extra muscle here and here. We had to convince the other person for something that was so obvious to you or me or anyone with a heart or a brain. Getting just them to see their own how irrational this was. So if you can have the IRS be irrational about a taxi fare to go see your cancer doctor, right? What do you think the IRS is going to treat you like if you're living in a high income jurisdiction in, like, say, Hong Kong or Dubai, where you're making $300,000 a year and, 60-70% of your income is eaten up by your rent and all the high expenses? You could see them not really getting to the reality, because you could say, well, in Hong Kong, there's that giant slum, right? You could live in there for probably a penny or two a day, right? I mean, it's dirt cheap. So it's more or less saying, well, no, because I'm a U.S. person, there's certain places I can't live. It's a security risk. And plus, I don't know how to navigate that giant slum and all that. I don't think I could live there.
So proving your allowable expenses.
Proving is what it's going to come down to, because that's what, for so many people overseas, they are making a substantial amount of money. Even if the IRS went and tripled the normal allowable expenses, it still doesn't come up enough. So these are going to be the things that this is the issue. Now, if these people before didn't deal with the problems, like, okay, well, the IRS, be reasonable or you'll get nothing. Well, here now they have that threat of like, well, we'll revoke your levy, or we will revoke your passport, and now you will have nothing. You will have to leave whatever country you are. Live in the U.S. I don't know what you're going to do here because you have nothing here. But you basically have to leave humiliated, dead broke. And now the IRS really gets nothing. And all you did was disrupt an entire thing for what? So these are going to be
okay. So you want to keep excellent records of all your expenses, but you can't rely just on that. You might need the Taxpayer Advocate to help, because they're going to be fighting for this, but you can't rely just on that. And
because you can't let you. It's not fair, because look, it's fantastic. Nina has created an automatic taxpayer assistance for any expat whose passport is revoked. That is I learned that last night, and that is a fantastic thing. We say a lot of great things about Nina and her team, and this is another example of it. She really gets it. She really, really understands what's going on in reality, and so that's fantastic. That was great to know. But at the same point, is you have to do the favor. They're doing a favor for you. You have to help them get their job done. So just don't expect them to do the legwork. Put it all in a package for them. Or make your best argument so they can say, okay, I see your best argument. Thank you. Now we can go with your best argument. Tell us all the facts that are going on. That helps them advocate your position a lot better. But when they're going to say, hey, well, you're doing something unfair, and then they're blindsided by some fact from the IRS, now it's like it's a little harder to be a strong advocate. It's like, oh, hey, you didn't tell us about that.
And this could turn into, it could potentially be a lot of people affected by this. So there's potential for Taxpayer Advocate to be overwhelmed with people contacting them for help. So I'd say the more organized you are, the more representation you have behind you, the smoother it's going to go.
The other thing we learned is just sort of the whole notice issue is sort of and this is why the IRS is starting with the denials. You're denying someone in the U.S. a passport.
Yep.
Well, they know that you did. But the issue is overseas, and as Keith during the call referenced, the Treasury Inspector General, I think in 2015, did a report on mail IRS notices to people overseas. So many of them weren't getting there because the IRS isn't formatting the address correctly. And sending something certified overseas is a mixed bag. It may or may not. I asked Keith if I sent him a certified letter from the U.S., if he would get it in France. He said probably. He probably would, but not every place. It's not the U.S. Postal Service that's going to deliver to your mountaintop in Nepal.
Right, and I guess the IRS, aren't they on like IBM version 200 that's still like formatting that doesn't understand in other countries?
I think it's COBOL. I think and it's true. The IRS, the IRS has 7 different databases that they've always tried to modernize, but they're never willing to give up an old feature. So that's why you're in this impossible system. And whenever you're talking to IRS appeals or something, one of the most common things is like, hold on, I got to switch screens.
Yes, and I can just picture the screen. It's that black screen with like the green giant letters.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, they have
like tab.
There is some of that. So they constantly hold on, I got to switch screens. Okay, hold on, I got to switch modules. That's the way it is because they don't have one database for everything, and they're bouncing back and forth. And now there's going to be another database with. Here's the people who have passport issues. So it's really going to be a mess. We're trying to advise people to try to get ahead of it.
Yeah.
You really don't want to be one of the people stuck. The IRS, once these go, it can overwhelm a lot of people because these are cases typically, if I could say this, that if someone is traveling around the world, okay, well, I know one thing about them. They can afford airfare. And if they're traveling around the world on a passport, the airport probably costs more than a flight to Orlando. So I'm like, all right, well, you have some money. So my guess is, and typically what happens if someone who has a passport, their earning capacity is, on average, generally higher than someone who doesn't. I think that's a fair statement to make. Well, when you don't make a lot of money, your tax problem is easier to resolve. Really, it's like there's nothing there. The problems get hard when you have assets and you have income, yet you have real life constraints that the IRS isn't willing to recognize in a reality. There's always a point. It's like, yes, that person makes that high income, but there's a reason why they make that high income, that they live in the right area, they wear the right clothes, they drive the right car. It's this lifestyle that allows them to make this income that you're able to tax so high.
Right.
Take away that lifestyle, it doesn't work.
They're not Mariah Carey walking around with a fan to blow their hair all the time. They're living like a real, honest to goodness life.
Sometimes people do need to make certain adjustments. Sometimes you run into people a little bit of spending habits that you don't really need to spend so much.
No offense, Mariah. If you've got a tax issue, call us. What I will say, too, is we have a lot of people contacting us saying things like, I'm just an average Joe, and I'm supposed to fly to my friend's wedding in the Caribbean next week, and I know I have a tax problem. Are they going to take my passport at the airport? At this point, we haven't seen that happening, but it's hard to know with the IRS day to day. I every single solitary morning, I check IRS passport revocation page to see if it's active. As of yet, it is not. It still says it's not happening.
The last update was in June, is that right?
Yep.
Okay, so June of 2017 was the last update, and here we are on September 1st.
Yep.
So that's what we've learned so far. It's interesting. It's going to be a real hassle, and I was talking to them, and I don't, I think we're all in agreement that really no one wanted this law to pass except those in Congress because they were assured that through this pay-go budgeting thing where, hey, look, if here's free money, this will now have spending neutral. The spending program here is offset by this new revenue source by revoking passports. Therefore, we can say we are spending deficit neutral, which is always a complete lie because the revenue projections that they have never come to fruition. It's always a fantasy thing, and no one's ever held to account for when that where that revenue doesn't happen. We saw that in FATCA. That's why FATCA was passed. FATCA was not a standalone. It was passed because it was free money. Just pass this law and it's free money. And so if I was going to repeal FATCA, or if I was going to do anything, I would make sure that it was going to increase revenue. By repealing FATCA, we'll increase revenue because we won't be such jerks that are hammering people so hard. They're going to want to comply with us.
So thanks to the Taxpayer Advocate, they do really wonderful work. They seem to really be, on the cusp of everything that's happening,
Yes,
and they make sure they hold the IRS accountable.
And I would say that they absolutely know what's happening, and they were so kind to share some of the updates with us. And hopefully, some people, it's like get ahead of it. And it's they also, they want you to deal with the problem too. They want, the Taxpayer Advocate wants you to confront a tax problem, be reasonable, and they want everyone to be reasonable.
Yep.
And that's our goal too, is like, look, we can solve a tax problem. You got to be reasonable. The IRS has got to be reasonable. Clients got to be reasonable. Somewhere in there, that's how these things get. Whereas people get obstinate, that's where we get these unresolvable cases. And it's really unfortunate because the government doesn't get any money and someone's life is ruined. So that's where we try to, find some middle ground and find some sort of compromise that's at least livable, that our clients can live with. I don't care too much about the IRS, to be honest. They don't.
I think they know that by now. All right. If you have an issue you're concerned about maybe getting your passport denied or revoked, don't hesitate to contact us. We can help. It's info@IRSMedic.com. Check out IRSMedic.com for a ton of great information on passport revocation and tax issues. You can like and comment below. Subscribe to our channel so you get updates about passport revocation and other tax issues. Thank you so much for watching today.